they say the house listens. Even now, in the dead of night, when no tall guides walk its halls and no visitors whisper through its winding staircases, the wood groans like it's remembering something. Some swear it's just the California wind, others say it's the dead. The story begins not with a house, but with a woman. Sarah Winchester was once the picture of refinement, petite, soft-spoken, educated in the arts and languages, and married into one of the most powerful fortunes in America. Her husband, William Wirt Winchester, heir to the Winchester Repeating Arms Company, sat at the helm of a weapon empire. His rifles were changing warfare, hunting, and survival itself. They were the gun that won the West, but also the gun that ended countless lives. And it was heartbreak that came for Sarah first, as death came for her only child, a daughter named Annie, lived just 40 days before she was taken by a wasting disease so rare, doctors could only stand by helpless. 15 years later, her husband followed, tuberculosis carving him away in slow, suffocating agony. In less than 2 decades, Sarah lost everything that had defined her, her family, her purpose, and any faith she might have held that life was fair. But what she gained was money, an inheritance so vast it could have bought entire towns, $20 million in 1881 currency, and a daily income that most people wouldn't earn in a lifetime. It was said she never needed to lift a finger again, and yet, she lifted a hammer. Because Sarah believed she was cursed, she turned to a Boston medium for answers, desperate for a voice from the other side to explain her suffering. And the medium, whether through genuine vision or cold theatrical cruelty, told her the truth she feared most: the spirits of every soul slain by Winchester rifles were bound to her. They followed her, they blamed her. There was only one way to keep them at bay. She must leave her home. She must head west, and once she found the right place, she must build, not a simple home, not a single mansion, but a house that would never be finished. A maze to confuse the dead, a fortress against the curse, a place where hammers never fell silent. If construction ever stopped, the medium warned, death would come for her. And so Sarah Winchester boarded a train bound for California. Some say she was running from the spirits. Others believe she was running with them. Either way, when she stepped off at the station in San Jose, the land itself seemed to lean toward her, waiting to see what she would build, and what it would cost her. The train hissed to a stop, a long sigh of steam curling into the California sky. Sarah stepped down, her black morning dress trailing over the dusty platform. To the few who caught a glimpse of her, she was a shadow in the sunlight, a woman made smaller by grief, yet somehow still commanding the space around her. San Jose in the 1880s was little more than farmland and scattered homesteads. The air smelled of tilled earth and fruit blossoms, but Sarah wasn't looking for beauty. She was looking for solitude, and for a place where the spirits could be managed. She found it on the edge of the Santa Clara Valley, an unfinished, 8-room farmhouse surrounded by acres of orchard. To most, it was a fixer-upper. To Sarah, it was a blank canvas. The very next morning, the building began. Carpenters were hired, dozens of them, under strict orders, work in shifts, day and night, 7 days a week. There would be no pause, no winter rest, no Sundays off. The sound of hammers rang out over the orchards until it became part of the land itself. But it wasn't the speed of the construction that unsettled the workers. It was her instructions. A window set into the floor, a staircase that ended at the ceiling, a door that opened onto a 2-story drop. She gave no explanations, only soft nods when her strange orders were carried out. Some whispered she was mad. Others, after hearing the rumors of her science, kept their opinions to themselves. They noticed the locked room upstairs where she often vanished after midnight, carrying a small oil lamp. The workers swore they heard voices behind that door, not one, but many, murmuring in low, rhythmic tones. As the walls rose and the rooms multiplied, the house began to change in ways that didn't make sense. Hallways twisted where they shouldn't. Rooms branched into other rooms with no doors between them. From above, it might have looked less like a home and more like a trap. Sarah Winchester was building a labyrinth, not for the living, but for the dead. It started with the sound. At first, the hammers were just noise, rhythmic, predictable, the heartbeat of construction. But weeks turned into months, and the workers began to notice something strange. The hammering never stopped. Even after they put down their tools for the night, faint knocks would echo from empty rooms. Sometimes, they swore, they'd hear the saws, the slow drag of blade against wood, though no one was in the workshop. By the end of the first year, the simple farmhouse had transformed into a sprawling maze. New rooms sprouted like branches on a living tree. Staircases curled upward, only to be swallowed by solid ceilings. Doors opened to brick walls. Windows stared into other rooms, offering a view of spaces that didn't seem to belong. Sarah was everywhere, inspecting the carpentry with her gloved hands, taking careful measurements no one else understood, ordering a wall torn down and rebuilt 3 inches to the left, only to move it back again days later. One worker claimed that when he asked her about the purpose of a particularly pointless hallway, she smiled faintly and said, "It's not meant for you to understand." But it wasn't just her peculiarities that unsettled the crew. Tools went missing, only to be found weeks later in sealed-off rooms. Footsteps echoed overhead when everyone was working on the ground floor. More than once, a worker heard his name whispered directly into his ear, only to turn and find himself alone. Some men left after the first week. Others stayed, drawn by the steady pay, but spoke little about what they'd seen. Sarah's orders became stranger still. She demanded skylights set into the floors, windows built into chimneys, stairs so narrow they could barely fit a man's shoulders. Every detail, every impossibility, seemed intentional. And still, the work never stopped. The mansion expanded in every direction, like a living thing, its wooden frame groaning at night as if breathing. No one knew where the plans came from, because no plans were ever written down. Sarah seemed to carry the entire design, if it could even be called that, in her mind alone. Step inside, and the first thing you notice is the air. It's still, too still. Despite the hundreds of windows, sunlight barely seems to find its way in. Corridors bend without warning, swallowing you into dim, breathless pockets of shadow. One hall runs for nearly 50 feet, only to dead-end into a blank wall. Another narrows until you have to turn sideways to pass, before abruptly spilling into a ballroom with no musicians, no dancers, and a single, dusty organ. And then there are the stairs. One set rises in a perfect spiral, a graceful curve that climbs for 7 full turns, and ends abruptly at a locked door. Another, the infamous staircase to nowhere, takes 13 steps straight up into the ceiling, as though daring you to imagine what might happen if you kept climbing. Some doors lead to nothing but a drop, 20 feet to the garden below. Others open into brick, leaving you trapped in a space so small you can hear your own breath bouncing off the walls. Windows are everywhere, but they offer no comfort. Some look into other rooms. Some look into closets. One is built directly into the floor, a glass pane you can walk across, though few are brave enough to stand on it for long. Everywhere, the number 13 appears. 13 hooks in a closet, 13 panes of glass in a window, 13 steps on a staircase. It's a pattern so deliberate that even the skeptics begin to wonder what it means. Visitors often report the strangest sensation, that the house is watching them. The walls seem to tilt just slightly inward, as though leaning in to listen. Mirrors hang in unexpected places, catching your reflection when you least expect it. You begin to feel observed. Sarah Winchester once said the spirits could move freely through the walls, that the house itself was their playground. But standing here, it's hard not to wonder, are you wandering through her maze? Or has it been wandering through you? The first thing they noticed was the cold, not the kind that drifts in through cracks or open windows, but a sudden, concentrated chill. like stepping into a shadow that doesn't belong. It came without warning, in rooms bathed in sunlight, in hallways where no draft could possibly reach. Then came the sounds, faint at first, a single footstep when no one was behind you. A sigh that seemed to come from the far end of an empty corridor. But as the weeks went on, they grew bolder, knocking from inside the walls, whispered voices speaking in tones too low to understand, yet impossible to ignore. The creak of floorboards under invisible weight. The workers tried to laugh it off. They told each other it was just the house settling, just the wind. But no one had an explanation for the smell, a faint, lingering scent of gunpowder that sometimes filled entire rooms. One man swore he heard weeping late at night. He followed the sound up 2 flights of stairs, down 3 different halls, only to find himself standing at a bricked-up doorway. Another refused to work after feeling a cold hand grip his shoulder while he was hammering, a grip so tight he dropped his tools, only to turn and see nothing there. Sarah never seemed surprised when these stories reached her. She would listen, nodding, as though she'd been expecting them all along. Then, without a word, she'd make a note in her small leather journal. Later, the crew would find new walls going up, new doors opening into nowhere, as if she was rearranging the maze to keep something out, or in. The most unsettling place of all was a small, hidden chamber at the heart of the house. The workers called it the seance room. It had 1 entrance, but 3 exits, though 2 of them were false doors that dropped straight into empty space. The ceiling was low, the walls lined with narrow windows that opened into darkness. Sarah visited it every night at midnight, lantern in hand, staying for hours while the rest of the house slept. From outside the room, the crew sometimes heard murmurs, her voice, soft and careful, answering questions no one else had asked. And sometimes, they heard other voices. It was the one place in the Winchester house no worker dared to linger after dark. A small, octagonal chamber hidden deep in the mansion's tangled corridors, so well concealed that even now, some visitors wander for hours before finding it. Every night at the stroke of midnight, Sarah would enter this room with an oil lamp and a small brass bell. The bell would chime once. Then her voice would come, soft, almost coaxing. She spoke in long pauses, as though listening for answers. Sometimes she whispered so low, they could only catch fragments. Where should I build next? But it wasn't just her voice. On more than one occasion, a second voice answered, distant, warped, and impossible to place. It never spoke in full words, only in low, dragging tones that made the listener's hair stand on end. One carpenter swore he heard dozens of voices one night, all speaking at once, layered over each other like the babble of a crowd. When Sarah emerged, her lamp was out, and she walked the halls without it as though she could see perfectly in the dark. After each session, the orders came. Walls torn down, rooms sealed, staircases rebuilt. Sometimes entire wings were abandoned overnight, left to rot while new ones sprang up in another corner of the estate. When asked why she needed the seance room at all, Sarah reportedly answered with a faint smile, "It's where I receive my instructions." For 38 years, the house had never been silent. From the day Sarah Winchester arrived in San Jose, hammers had struck, saws had whined, and footsteps had echoed through unfinished hallways at all hours. It was the early hours of September 5, 1922, when Sarah died in her sleep. 83 years old, her body lay in the master bedroom, a lamp still burning on the nightstand. By the next morning, construction had ceased completely. Tools were dropped where they lay, nails half-driven, sawdust still curling on the floors. One worker left a wheelbarrow full of bricks in the middle of a hallway that didn't exist on any blueprint. The house itself seemed to notice. Rooms that had been filled with the sound of work now felt cavernous and hollow. Some say the night she died, the workers heard one last noise. Not the slam of a door or the creak of the old wood, but the distant chime of a brass bell. Once, twice, then silence. Time has not tamed the Winchester Mystery House. A century has passed since Sarah's death, yet the mansion remains, sprawling, crooked, and defiant against reason. Visitors report cold spots that appear and vanish in an instant. Some feel unseen fingers brush their arms. Others swear they've seen a figure in black standing at the far end of a hallway, only for it to dissolve as they approach. Though its bell has long since been removed, people still hear it sometimes, a single, hollow chime drifting across the gardens after midnight. Whatever the truth, one thing is certain: the Winchester Mystery House is not just a relic of the past. It's still listening, and if you stay long enough, if you wander just far enough from the safety of the tour group, it might just speak back.
Thank you for hanging around until the end of our tale. Every view is appreciated. If you have enjoyed it, please hit that like button and considering commenting and subscribing.